What is knowledge? You use the word every day. You claim to know things, but do you actually know what knowing is? Plato spent an entire dialogue trying to answer this question and failed. That failure changed philosophy forever. The Theaetetus opens with two men, Euclides and Terpsion, meeting in the streets of Megara. Euclides has just come from the harbor, where he saw the young mathematician Theaetetus being carried home, wounded and sick from battle. Euclides recalls that Socrates once predicted greatness for the boy. He reads aloud from a manuscript recording the conversation between Socrates and Theaetetus years earlier. Socrates puts the question directly, not what things do you know, but what is knowledge itself? He wants the definition, the essence that all instances of knowledge share. Theaetetus, a gifted young mathematician, accepts the challenge. He will attempt 3 definitions. Each will be demolished, and by the end we will know less than when we started, which, Socrates suggests, is progress. Before the inquiry begins, Socrates describes his method. His mother, Phaenerete, was a midwife. He is a midwife too, but of ideas. He claims to have no wisdom of his own. Instead, he helps others give birth to the ideas within them. And like a real midwife, he can tell whether the intellectual offspring is genuine or merely a wind egg, empty, false, stillborn. This is the maieutic method, and it defines everything that follows. Theaetetus proposes that knowledge is perception, aesthesis. What you see, hear, feel, that is what you know. It seems obvious. The table before you is brown, you perceive it, therefore you know it. Socrates recognizes this as the same doctrine taught by the great sophist Protagoras, who declared that man is the measure of all things. If man is the measure of all things, then whatever appears to me is true for me, and whatever appears to you is true for you. The wind feels cold to you and warm to me, and we are both right. There is no objective fact about the wind. There is only how it appears to each perceiver. This is radical relativism, and Socrates must demolish it because if every perception is equally true, then philosophy itself is impossible. Socrates links Protagoras to an even older tradition, the Flux philosophy of Heraclitus. Everything is always changing. Nothing simply is, everything is always becoming. If reality is in constant flux, then perception, which captures a moment of becoming, is the only access we have to it. Knowledge is perception because reality is motion. It's an elegant theory. It's also, Socrates will show, incoherent. Socrates begins his attack. If the same wind is cold for one person and warm for another, and both perceptions are equally true, then there is no fact about the wind at all. But it gets worse. If every perception is true, then no one can ever be wrong about anything. And if no one can be wrong, then Protagoras himself is wrong to claim any special expertise. Why would anyone pay Protagoras to teach them if their untrained perceptions are already perfectly true? Here Socrates delivers the killing blow. If man is the measure of all things, and it appears to Socrates that Protagoras' doctrine is false, then by Protagoras' own principle it is false for Socrates. But Protagoras must accept this, because he claims every appearance is true. His doctrine, consistently applied, destroys itself. It is the first great demonstration of self-refutation in the history of philosophy. Socrates then turns on radical flux. If everything is always changing, including the perceiver and the perceived, then nothing can be described at all. You can't say the wind is cold because by the time you say it, everything has shifted. Language, thought, and knowledge all require some stability. Total flux doesn't just eliminate knowledge, it eliminates speech itself. But the most fundamental objection is simpler. We know things that are not perceived at all. You know that 7 plus 5 equals 12. You know that injustice is wrong. These are not things you see, hear, or touch. There is a whole domain of knowledge, mathematical, ethical, abstract, that perception cannot reach. If knowledge were perception, we could never know anything beyond what hits our senses. The first definition falls. Theaetetus tries again. Perhaps knowledge is true judgment, true doxa. You know something when you believe it, and your belief happens to be correct. This seems much more promising. After all, what more could knowledge be than getting it right? But Socrates, as always, wants to understand the gap between true and knowledge. Consider a jury trial. A skilled lawyer persuades the jury that the defendant is guilty. The defendant really is guilty. So the jury has a true belief about the case. But do they have knowledge? No. They were persuaded, not shown. They believed the truth, but for the wrong reasons, because of the lawyer's eloquence, not because of direct evidence. They could easily have been persuaded of a falsehood. True belief, if arrived at by luck or rhetoric rather than genuine understanding, is not knowledge. But wait, if knowledge is true belief, what is false belief? How is error even possible? If you know something, you can't be wrong about it. If you don't know it, how can you have any belief about it at all? This puzzle, the problem of false belief, turns out to be surprisingly hard. How can the mind get something wrong? What is the mechanism of error? Socrates offers an image. Imagine there is a block of wax in each person's soul. Perceptions and thoughts leave impressions on this wax, like seal rings pressed into a soft surface. Memory works by fitting current perceptions to stored impressions. False belief occurs when you match a perception to the wrong imprint, when you see a person at a distance and mistake them for someone else. The wax model explains some errors. Bad wax gives blurry impressions, leading to confusion. But it only works for errors involving perception and memory, not for purely intellectual mistakes. So Socrates tries another image. Imagine the mind as an aviary full of birds. Each bird is a piece of knowledge you have acquired. Knowing something is like putting a bird in the cage. Using that knowledge is like reaching in to catch a specific bird. False belief occurs when you reach for a pigeon but grab a dove instead. You have the knowledge but access the wrong piece. This is the distinction between possessing knowledge and actively having it in hand. You can possess the knowledge that 7 plus 5 is 12 but grab the wrong answer in the moment. But the aviary image falls apart too. If the birds are pieces of knowledge and you grab the wrong one, then you are mistaking one piece of knowledge for another. But knowledge is by definition true. You can't know that 7 plus 5 is 11. Should we add birds of ignorance to the aviary? Then we need to explain how you mistake a bird of knowledge for a bird of ignorance, and we're caught in an infinite regress. The second definition fails. Theaetetus makes one final attempt. Knowledge is true belief accompanied by a logos, an account, an explanation, a rational justification. You don't just believe truly, you can say why it's true. This is remarkably close to the modern definition of knowledge that dominated epistemology for over 2,000 years. Justified true belief. Socrates reports a theory he once heard in a dream. The basic elements of reality have no logos. They can only be named, not defined. Complex things composed of these elements can be given an account by listing their components. So knowledge belongs only to complex things, while the simple elements remain unknowable. It sounds plausible, but Socrates finds a fatal flaw. Consider a syllable like SO. It's composed of the letters S and O. If you can know the syllable by knowing its elements, then you must already know the elements. But the dream theory said elements can't be known, only named. And if the syllable is something over and above its elements, a new unity, then knowing the parts doesn't give you knowledge of the whole. Either way, the theory fails. The elements are either knowable, contradicting the theory, or the whole exceeds them, making analysis insufficient. Socrates examines three possible meanings of account. First, an account might be expressing thought in speech, but then any true opinion expressed aloud would count as knowledge, which adds nothing. Second, an account might be listing the elements. But correctly listing letters doesn't guarantee knowledge. A child might spell a word right by luck. Third, an account might mean identifying the distinguishing mark. But to know the distinguishing mark, you already need knowledge of the thing. You need knowledge to define knowledge. The definition is circular. The dialogue ends in Aporia, genuine, honest puzzlement. Three definitions have been proposed and destroyed. Knowledge is not perception. Knowledge is not true belief. Knowledge is not true belief with an account. Socrates has delivered no baby today, only wind eggs. Theaetetus must leave for court. Socrates must leave for his own trial, the trial that will condemn him to death. But the failure is the point. Theaetetus has been purged of false confidence. He thought he knew what knowledge was. Now he knows he doesn't. And this, Socrates insists, is a better state. The midwife has done his work. The mind has been cleared for genuine inquiry. Negative results are not failures. They are the fertile ground from which understanding eventually grows. The Theaetetus launched epistemology as a philosophical discipline. Its 3 failed definitions set the agenda for 24 centuries of debate. When Edmund Gettier published a 3-page paper in 1963 showing that justified true belief is not sufficient for knowledge, he was continuing the conversation Plato started. The puzzle of the Theaetetus remains unsolved. We still do not have a satisfactory definition of knowledge, and that perhaps is the deepest lesson of all. The most important questions are the ones that resist final answers.